What's going on, duelists? It's your boy Nick, bringing you today on the channel a test hand video for my recently updated Vendread deck profile for the post-Supreme Darkness format. For those of you new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do Yu-Gi-Oh content mainly focused around rogue and casual decks alike. If that's the kind of Yu-Gi-Oh that you're interested in, then I highly encourage you to smash that subscribe button. We are currently working our way to 3,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. So Vendread is a deck that I've been working on vigorously for the past, I would say, 4 weeks or so now, about a month, since I wanted to build a deck with featuring the support from Supreme Darkness. And I made an initial deck profile video right around when Supreme Darkness released a few weeks ago. And since then, I've been optimizing the deck list, kind of working on some of its flaws. And I've actually been working with some other subscribers in the Discord, which, a bit of a segue, I do have a Discord for the YouTube channel now, which will be linked in the description down below. There, me and other duelists and subscribers kind of bounce ideas off one another and kind of just talk about the decks that end up being featured on this channel. So it's a pretty good place to start if you have questions about any particular deck that has been featured on the channel. And I've been working with several other duelists specifically, talking about the deck's consistency, some of the lines, and just suggesting ideas. And it's actually been pretty fun, honestly. I'm glad that it's starting to develop into a bit of a community there. So again, the Discord will be linked in the description below. It is absolutely free to join. There is no cost to you other than just help supporting the channel in the long run. But in the Discord, like I said, one of the subscribers there had requested that I do a test hand video, which is why this particular video is being made. I try to stay true to my word. If I promise somebody something, I will definitely go ahead and do it. And I think the deck is in a very good place right now. Again, keep in mind it is Vendread at the end of the day, right? Vendread is the roguest of rogue when it comes to, you know, fun, casual decks. I'm not expecting this deck to like top a YCS, or I'm not saying you're going to build this and all of a sudden go to a regional and top. This deck is super casual. It does struggle with a bunch of different inherent problems, not only with just the way Vendread itself is designed, but also with the fact that it's still a ritual deck, and ritual decks in general, unless they're like reinventing the wheel, come with their own struggles, you know, outside of Vendread's own issues. So I've been working as hard as I possibly can to try and bring this deck to a point of playability, and I think I'm very close to that, or something near what would be ideal. So I'm gonna do just random test hands for this video. There's not gonna be really any structure. One of the interesting things about this deck is the fact that it's so non-linear as far as how its combos work. Like, for example, you know, because there's so many one-ofs in this deck, no two test hands look the same. And I'm not saying that that's inconsistent, because obviously at the end of the day, the deck still does Vendread things and tries to do that pretty much every hand you get. It's just the way it goes about doing that is vastly different from the last. So, which makes the deck very hard to pilot in a lot of scenarios. And it's not something that like I would recommend to a newer duelist to just pick up and play, because it is very complex. There's a ton of moving parts in this 60 card list. And like I mentioned, the deck list that I'm actually featuring here in the test hand video was in my previous combo Vendread video, which will be linked in the description down below. So don't reference the initial deck profile that I made like 3-4 weeks ago. Reference the profile from my combo video, which will be linked in the description down below. So enough with that. I babbled on enough. We're gonna do just random test hands. And before we get started, kind of funny. It is Valentine's Day weekend, so for any of you duelists who are spending time with their significant others, you know, props to you for that. But one of the things that I just realized earlier today is, you know, who would probably like to spend Valentine's Day with their significant other? Vendread Slayer would. For those of you who know the Vendread lore, it is pretty messed up overall. But either way, it's neither here nor there. With that out of the way, let's dive into some test hands. I'm going to be pile shuffling here, and we'll just get started with a 5-card opening hand. We're going to play this out like we're going first. Alright, duelists, so I just got done pile shuffling the deck list here. We are going to cut live on camera. And like I said, we're just going to play this out like we're going first. Whether the hand is playable or not, this is going to give you the most real representation of what the deck actually is like in a real world situation. So again, you know, this is completely unscripted. If we end up drawing an unplayable hand, I mean, it is what it is. Obviously, you understand that that's what happens when you play a crazy rogue deck such as Vendread. Sometimes your hands won't be ideal, but I don't think that should be the case. Like I said, I've spent a lot of time with this deck working on as many of its flaws as I can, you know, handle. And I think it is at a very playable state. But like I said, with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and draw a 5-card hand. So we have Shinobi Necro, Bestial Druisworm, Zombie World, Vendread Evolution, and a copy of Bestial Lubellion. So this is unfortunately the issue with playing a deck that has a lot of other engines, is sometimes you end up drawing hands like this. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any access to our Vendread engine whatsoever, which is obviously really unfortunate. This hand isn't terrible. I mean, you do have lines, but realistically, this hand going first isn't going to establish much of anything. Just looking at this at surface level. Let's see. I mean, drawing Zombie World is not ideal. It is just a 1 of in 60, and this is... My luck with 1-ofs is pretty crap for those of you who've watched the channel for a long time. Just for the sake of explaining, like, Shinobi Necro and Zombie World are both 1-ofs. And this is a 60-card deck list. So, like, the fact that I opened 2 different 1-ofs in this hand just goes to show you how terrible my luck can be at times. But either way, that's neither here nor there. I think the line here is try to go Lubellion, pitch to search for a Bestial. Obviously, most likely Magnamut is the target you'd want to grab. And outside of that, I'm not really sure where the line goes from here, because none of this gets you anywhere. And that's the sad part about this particular opening test hand, is that it's not very ideal. I mean, you can activate Zombie World, right? Which does make everything zombie. I mean, or maybe you don't even want to do that, because, like, if you're trying to make Bestial Dissipator, you do need to have dragons on board in order to facilitate that. But I don't think this hand we're getting to Dissipator anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter in the grand scheme. So we probably just activate the Zombie World. And ideally, you don't want to banish the Lubellion for the Magnamut, because then you want to be able to summon the Lubellion and place Branded Regained. So that's not a very good line. I mean, realistically, I mean, your play here is probably just like set Shinobi Necro so you don't die, and then hope that the Druisworm and Magnamut combo is enough to get you to turn 3, which I know sounds really crap, but like I said, that's the unfortunate reality of playing rogue decks. And just for the sake of assuming we survive, what's our top deck next turn? Revenants. Yeah, that's not even ideal. The Bestials here would have to do a lot of heavy lifting in order for us to kind of maintain this game state. So, unfortunately, that wasn't really ideal. So let's go ahead and pile shuffle again and see what kind of a hand we get. Hopefully you duelists are enjoying the content, obviously. Like I said, links in the description down below for not only the Discord, but also the combo video, which does feature the updated Vendread deck list. So let me go ahead and pile shuffle this again, and then we will reconvene with another 5-card hand. Alright, so I'm back after pile shuffling. Let me just do some more regular shuffling here on camera for you duelists, so you guys don't think I'm trying to stack the deck. And like I said, that's what I enjoy most about my test hand videos, is that it's not just like, oh, let me show you the best possible opening hand. Like, this is giving you the realist representation of what the deck is like. So again, I already cut just to prove I'm not stacking. So we have Diviner, that's a very good draw. Mizuki, Ret Time, see, my luck with 1-ofs is horrible. Vendread Executor, and Delta of Invitation. Now, again, here's the problem. Like, I drew this card, which is just a 1-of again in 60. This is usually the target that we're summoning off the Diviner when she gets tributed. So the fact that I drew this is really unfortunate. Although I do believe Diviner can summon it from hand, it's still, like, you want to summon it from deck. Like, this could have been any other card, right? Same thing with Mizuki, too. Like, again, drawing, again, multiple 1-ofs in another 5-card hand is just hilarious to me. Like, you know, how have I not seen, like, my actual playset of, like, starters and stuff, outside of, like, Diviner, who's a playset, obviously, but you get what I'm saying. So this hand is obviously better than the first one. At least we have access to Engine. Delta of Invitation is, like, a custom card, so we're going to lead with that first. Activate that field spell, and on activation, it will allow us to Foolish Burial a level 5 or higher zombie from our deck to the graveyard. So there's a couple of ways we can go about this. I think here what we want to do is try to send a Slayer from our deck to the graveyard with the effect of Delta of Invitation. Now the reason we want to go ahead and do that is because we opened with the Diviner. Now, Diviner, while a great starter for the deck, tends to be lackluster in scenarios where we didn't open a way to a ritual or open a ritual spell. Now, what I mean by that is, like, Diviner, when she's summoned, will pitch the Herald, which we'll do here. So we're going to normal summon the Diviner, activate her effect to send a fairy from the deck or extra deck to grave, of which we'll send our copy of Herald of the Arclight from the extra deck to the graveyard, triggering the Arclight's effect to search for a ritual spell or a ritual monster. Now, this is what I was saying, where Diviner kind of is a pretty terrible starter in scenarios where we didn't have access to a ritual or a ritual spell. Reason for that is because if we didn't open access to either, Diviner's only grabbing you one piece of the puzzle. So you're either grabbing a monster, a ritual monster, or a ritual spell, but not both. Luckily in this hand, we had Delta of Invitation, which allows us to get access to a ritual, right? Because we can ritual summon the Vendreads from the graveyard. But if we didn't have this, and we didn't open like Executor, like Diviner, Ben Herald, and Search for Origin gets us nowhere if we don't have access to a ritual monster, obviously. So this is what I was saying, where Diviner can be a bit awkward at times. But luckily with this particular hand, we did open the access to Slayer, so the combo's still gonna proceed as normal. Keep in mind, Diviner's level becomes level 6 because she gains the levels of the fairy she sent, which makes her the appropriate tribute fodder for a Slayer, which is why we sent Slayer off Delta. We're going to activate our copy of Origin, which will allow us to tribute our Diviner to ritual summon out our Slayer from the graveyard. Again, remember, Diviner was a level 6, so she meets the entire requirement for the Slayer. Because Diviner of the Herald is tributed, she will allow us to special summon a level 2 or lower fairy monster from our hand or deck. Luckily, Diviner does let us summon from hand, so, you know, we can still get access to the Reviver Emitter. But again, this is still not a card you want to draw. You would have much rather summoned it from deck and had her be any other card in your hand, you know, to be able to play with. But at least, you know, it's not a hard garnet. So we get access to the Ret Time Reviver here. We can now go Delta of Invitation's secondary effect, allowing us to produce a zombie token for absolutely free. Since we control a zombie monster, the token's level is 5 and its stats are 0/0. Now what we can do here is we're going to synchro summon using the Emitter and the Slayer to make a Synchro 8, which is usually going to be our copy of the Axel Synchro Stardust Dragon. We will go Chainlink 1 Slayer in grave, since it ritual summoned and was sent to grave. Chainlink 2 Axel Synchro to revive a level 2 or lower tuner from the graveyard. So we can use the Axel Synchro to chain block our Slayer search, which is really cool in my opinion. We'll bring back the Reviver Emitter off of the Axel Synchro effect, and then with the Slayer, that's going to allow us to add a ritual spell from the deck to our hand, and then send a Vendread monster from deck to grave. So we've already used Origin. We probably grab Evolution here. And then we will send to the graveyard a copy of, probably send what? Probably just send Hound Horde, realistically. Hound Horde's a good target to pitch. If I can find it, of course. That is the problem with 60 card decks. It's always a pain to search what you need. So we'll add Evolution and send Hound Horde to grave off of the Slayer effect. Now here at this juncture, we actually have access to one of two plays. Because we have a level 8 Synchro Dragon on the board and a Dark Fairy Tuner, we can do one of two options. We can either Synchro Summon for a copy of the Arms of Genex Return 0, because he does just require a Dark Tuner, which Reviver Emitter is, plus a non-tuner, or we can make the Bestial Dissipator, which requires a tuner, which obviously Emitter's a tuner, and then a non-tuner Dragon, which the Axel Synchro is. So we can go into either of these two synchros depending on the scenario. Generally, I prioritize going into Bestial Dissipator first, because I feel that this card gives us more utility and extension, so as opposed to Arms of Genex. But there are situations where you would want to make this early to play through certain hand traps. Like obviously we already have like dark and light attributes in the graveyard, so the Arms of Genex would be able to negate both of those attributed monsters. So if we get like nibbed or something, there is argument to make Arms of Genex early. But for the purpose of this combo, we're just going to make the Dissipator using the Axel Synchro and the Reviver Emitter here. So we'll make Dissipator. Also something to note is that if we did make the Arms of Genex, it puts a wind attribute in grave as well. So in theory, we'd be able to negate dark, light, and wind monster effects if we did summon the Arms of Genex. But like I said, we're just making the Dissipator here for this combo. And now that we are at this juncture, what we can do is we can go activate Vendread Evolution to send a Vendread monster from deck to grave to ritual a Vendread from our hand or graveyard. And obviously our only target is the Slayer here. So what we're going to do is we're going to send a Scar of the Vendread from our deck to the graveyard to re-ritual summon out our Slayer again for the second time this turn from our graveyard. That will trigger the Scar of the Vendread effect since it was sent from to the graveyard, allowing us to add a Vendread spell or trap from the deck to our hand, of which we will probably end up grabbing a copy of Ravenous Vendread, the third ritual spell in the theme. Of course, I must keep passing it. There it is. Sorry about that. So we'll grab a copy of Ravenous Vendread from deck to our hand, off of the effect of our Scar. And then at this point, we have a couple of options here. We can link off the Slayer and the Zombie token for a link 2 of our choice. Keep in mind, we're not locked into anything specific, so we can go into like add Vendread here, but I think realistically we probably want to go for a Vampire Sucker, just for that added utility that she provides with the draw when we summon from grave. And then we can... let's use Vendread Houndhord's effect in grave, allowing us to discard a Vendread card to special summon itself. So let's pitch our Vendread Executor from the hand. It's pretty much a free pitch because we can ritual it from grave anyway. Bring out our Houndhord. That will trigger our Vampire Sucker effect since the zombie was summoned from our grave this turn. We get to draw a card, so we're just going to draw, see what we get. Algul Mazera, pretty good draw overall. Not too terrible, offers us protection while it's in the hand or the graveyard, so that's pretty nice. And then, now that we're here, let's see. Let's go Ravenous. This allows us to special summon a Vendread from our hand, deck, or grave, and then ritual summon by using the monster summoned by this first effect, plus other monsters we control as the material. So Ravenous is the only ritual spell that does not allow you to use material from the hand, which for the most part isn't a problem. And this allows you to grab like whatever Vendread you want to give that ritual that you summon a specific inherited effect. So we're going to summon out Revenants with the first effect of Ravenous. It does summon it in face down defense. And then we get to tribute the summon monster plus other monsters we control to meet the ritual requirement cost. So Revenants was a 4, Houndhord was a 3. That does allow us to summon out a Slayer from our graveyard with the inherited effects of both Houndhord and Revenants attached to it, which means he will be able to banish a special summon monster as a quick effect and banish an opponent's spell trap as a quick effect as well. Note that the Houndhord does banish itself when it leaves the field due to the restriction of its own effect. So now we have a Slayer with that's pretty much 2 disruptions. Because we did tribute a monster, we can now go Scar the Vendread in our graveyard. Since a monster was tributed, we can banish a zombie to special summon this, but we're locked into Vendreads while he's face up on the board. So we can go ahead and banish our copy of Revenants to bring out our copy of Scar here. Keep in mind, remember, we're locked into Vendread special summons while he's on the board, summoned by that effect. Well, this is where Dissipator's first effect comes into play, where we can special summon a banished light or dark back to our field. Since both of our banished monsters are Vendread monsters, we can still summon them under the Scar restriction. So I guess we can get back the... probably, what, Houndhord into rotation? So we can resummon the Houndhord from the banish zone. And what that allows us to do is link both the Scar and the Houndhord away. Keep in mind, Houndhord will go back to grave now. That will allow us to link into a copy of Add Vendread here. And then we can go add Vendread effect to give us some follow-up for next turn, like by adding either Evolution back to hand or a Ravenous back to hand. Probably add the Evolution back to hand for follow-up with the add Vendread effect. And that would pretty much wrap up our turn. You know, and then we have Algul Mazera in the hand as a protection for all the zombies on the field, which is pretty nice, plus follow-up in the form of evolution. So what this board represents is at least 3 disruptions minimum, because obviously Dissipator is a negate. We do have a banished monster here, so even if the opponent doesn't have a banished card we can shuffle back, we could just shuffle back our Revenants into the deck. That will, you know, make our Dissipator live for its negate, or destruction, depending on what you shuffle from where. Slayer is 2 disruptions, because again, he can banish spells and traps and special summon monsters as quick effect. And then Sucker just provides us, again, you know, some simple pluses. You know, every time we summon a zombie from grave, she'll give us a draw. And then we obviously have the Add Vendread here. That's pretty difficult to out, because keep in mind, over the course of this combo, we were able to establish an Origin Engrave, which means that our Slayers, you know, remember, Add Vendread's name becomes Slayer while on the field. If they were to be destroyed by battle or card effect, we can banish this instead to protect them. So that both the Ritual Slayer and the Link Slayer are pretty difficult to out by conventional means, and we even have the Algol Mazera in the hand, which again the opponent won't know about, as an additional layer of protection for both of these monsters, which is obviously really nuts. And then the Add Vendread is pretty much just a Foolish Burial in the damage step, so even if the opponent tries to get cute and go battle phase, swing over this, Add Vendread allows us to send any zombie from deck to grave, which is really huge. And then obviously we still have Delta of Invitation on the board, so if next turn this is still here, we can always go Delta and produce another token for free. So you can kind of see like how the hand we drew wasn't strictly ideal, but it was playable enough that we're able to end on a board with minimum 3 disrupts plus mad follow-up and insane levels of protection. We have 2 different ways to protect these cards. So like I said, they're much stickier than they let on. And obviously on the subsequent turn, if the Slayer does happen to leave the field, he's still able to float into another ritual spell and then bin another Vendread monster from deck to grave. So that's something to keep in mind. Another cool thing we could have done too is if we didn't want to keep the Sucker and the Add Vendread on the board, once we cleared ourselves of the Vendread lock by getting the Scar off, we could have linked both Sucker and Add Vendread off for a copy of the Yuki-Onna, the Absolute Zero Mayakashi. And that may have actually been the better play rather than just keeping Sucker and Savior on board, because at least with the Yuki-Onna on the field, she represents an additional 2 more disruptions. Whenever a monster is summoned from grave, or if a zombie monster in the graveyard, whenever a monster is summoned from grave, or if a monster effect's activated in grave, she can target a monster in the field, negate its effects permanently, and make its attack 0. And she can do that twice per turn. So realistically, that's probably better than just leaving these 2 cards out on the board. It's a matter of preference, really, in the grand scheme. But at least this way, you get an additional 2 disrupts. So instead of having a 3 disruption board, you end up with a 5 disruption board, because she represents 2 disrupts, he represents 2 disrupts, and then the Dissipator is obviously still a disrupt with its effect as well. So that's probably the better play. So in hindsight, you know, probably linking off Sucker and Saviors better just to go into this. And again, she is still protected, not by the Origin effect, because again, she's not treated as Slayer, but she's protected from the Algol Mazera that we do have in our hand. So if she's going to be destroyed by battle or card effect, we can pitch the Mazera banish the Mazera from the hand to protect it, and then because Mazera was banished, he will summon himself via his own effect, which just means that she's more difficult to out than obviously she lets on as well. And then we still have our follow-up line. So that wraps up the video, but wraps up that particular combo hand. And again, like I said, we didn't open the most ideal hand. I mean, we opened with a couple Garnets and stuff, but just the Diviner alone, this goes to show you how powerful she can be, especially if you have access to a ritual spell or monster within that same hand. So let's go ahead and put everything back, and let's do another test hand before wrapping up this video. All right, duelists, we're back after pile shuffling. I'm going to cut the deck here for you on camera. And then we're going to draw a 5-card hand, see what we end up opening with. So open with the Diviner again, open with Forbidden Droplet, Foolish Burial, shout out to the Lost Art, Revendread Slayer, that's actually really cool, and a Volcarion the Rotting Phoenix. So this is a really good, probably the best test hand we've seen out of the 3 we've done so far. We have Diviner, and we also have access to either a ritual spell or ritual monster. We would have had that anyway, even if we didn't open this, because we have Foolish, which does get us either a ritual engrave or bins the Scar, and Scar can grab us a ritual spell. And then we have an extender in the form of Volcarion, but this is actually why I cut Volcarion down to 2, because in hands where you open both of these, the Volcarion isn't really an extender because you have to control a zombie, which Diviner isn't, and that's the only gripe I have. Like, if you summon the Diviner and Diviner does get, like, negated, you're not able to extend with Volcarion at that point. You would have to, like, hope that you have a play to Ritual Summon, which we do because we have Foolish plus Slayer, so we could always, like, send Scar, grab Ritual Spell, and then go off from there. But then we'd have to tribute our Diviner and the Volcarion, right? Like, we wouldn't even get to keep this in the hand to meet the summon requirement for Slayer. Unless, well, actually, no, not necessarily. Depends on the ritual spell we add. Because if we added Evolution, we could just go Evolution, send a Slayer from deck to ritual the Slayer in our hand. So that's actually an option that we have, which would maintain the Volcarion in our hand. And then we could just special Volcarion at that point, because Slayer's a zombie, obviously. Either way, you can kind of get the gist, but we're not playing, these test hands aren't here to show you like what happens when your stuff gets negated. This is just to give you an idea more or less of what the deck is like, as long as your cards end up resolving. So what we'll do here is we'll normal summon the Diviner, obviously, like we did in the previous combo. Activate Diviner effect to send a fairy. Now, the cool thing is if we're going second, because like for this hand, we don't necessarily need to send the Arclight, right? Because we already have access or a way to ritual summon. If we're going second, for example, and we wanted to like put pressure on the board, we could bin Elder Entity Entis, which we also play in our extra deck here. We could just send Entis, trigger Entis effect to attempt to like pop a card on field, which should bait some interaction early. And then the Diviner still becomes a level 6, and we can still tribute that Diviner for a Slayer, and then Diviner will still float into the emitter, which is a pretty cool line. But obviously we're going first, so there's no reason to send Entis here. We will just send the Arclight. And then Arclight effect will trigger, allowing us to add either a ritual monster or a ritual spell from the deck to our hand. We'll go ahead and grab a ritual spell. Since we don't need a ritual monster, we already have access to Slayer. So we're going to go ahead and add ourselves a copy of Vendread Origin. What that will allow us to do is we'll activate it. That will tribute our Diviner, remember, who is level 6. And we will get to summon out a Vendread Slayer from our hand. So because the Diviner was tributed, she will trigger her effect to special summon a level 2 or lower fairy from the hand or deck, except a copy of herself, which our target for that is the Ret-Time Reviver Emitter. Pretty much same, kind of the same thing we did in our previous combo. And now what we can do here is we can use the Volcarion at this point, because once we link off, or not link, we can either link obviously, but we're going to synchro this here. Once we synchro off the Slayer and the Reviver, we don't have a zombie on board, so we're not going to get an opportunity to summon Volcarion again potentially. So we'll just activate the effect to special him now, while we still maintain a zombie on the board. And then what we'll do here is we can link, or I keep saying link, we can synchro off the Emitter and the Slayer for our copy of the XL Synchro Stardust. Now, if you didn't want to make this for whatever reason, obviously it depends on the game state, right, and what you're facing, but we also have Psyframe Lord Omega as a target we can make for level 8s, plus the Skeletal Dragon Felgrin. But in this particular instance, we can't make the Felgrin because the Emitter is not a zombie tuner, so realistically our only two choices here are going to be Omega and the XL Synchro. So I guess it just depends on what you need at the given moment, but usually we're going to be going for the XL Synchro here because it does give you the higher ceiling, obviously. And it chain blocks the Slayer effect, which I like. So we'll Synchro into the XL Synchro Stardust. That will proc our Slayer as Chainlink 1, XL Synchro as Chainlink 2 to go ahead and chain block. We'll go XL Synchro to revive the Emitter, and then we'll go Slayer effect in the graveyard to add a ritual spell from the deck to our hand. And then go ahead and send a Vendread monster from the deck to the graveyard. So we can actually do something like add Evolution. And then let's send, I know this might sound a little odd, but let's go ahead and send our copy of Battle Lord for this particular combo. Yeah, here it is. Send a Battle Lord with the Slayer effect. And then we added Evolution to our hand. Now what we can do is synchro here our Stardust and our Emitter. For the Bestial Dissipator, again, like I said, I like going for Dissipator because he gives you that recursion from the Banish Zone, which you sometimes need to finish out your combo. So we'll make the Dissipator. And now what we can do here is we have a couple of options, really. So this is interesting. Why don't we do this? So we have Foolish plus Evolution. Yeah, why don't we do this? Let's go Foolish Burial. Let's go ahead and send ourselves a copy of... We can send any monster. And this is kind of interesting. Why don't we send our Vendread Stridges to the graveyard off of our Foolish effect? That will trigger our Stridges in grave to reveal a Vendread card in our hand, which we have the evolution to reveal. And then we'll special summon the Stridges out with its own effect, but banish it when it leaves the field. What this gives us here is synchro access, because Volcarion's a zombie tuner, and Stridges is a level 2 non-tuner. That gives us access to a 6. So we can synchro summon using Volcarion and Stridges. Remember, Stridges will be banished by its own effect when it leaves the field. We can synchro here into a copy of Immortal Dragon, who is a generic zombie tuner synchro monster. Immortal Dragon's effect states that we can send a zombie monster from our, I believe it's deck, hand or deck to grave? Or just deck. Send one zombie monster from deck to grave. And if you do, this card's level becomes the difference in levels of the monster sent. So you can send any zombie you want as long as it's not level 6. Because he does have to modify his level. Otherwise, you can't do it. So you can't send a level 6. So you have to send anything from 1 through 4 or 1 through 5 or 7 through 12, realistically, is what he can pitch. So doing this setup gives us an additional Foolish for a zombie monster, as long as, again, as it's not level 6 specifically. And I think there's quite a few things we could send. Why don't we just go ahead and bin... What's in our graveyard? We do have some interesting stuff there. Yeah, we can't send a 6. So I guess what we do then, we could send a copy of Mizuki to the graveyard. I'm trying to think if there was any reason to pitch a Vendread specific card. Because if we send like Core, what does that really do for us? Assuming we sent the Core. I don't think it... Well, I guess having Mizuki kind of does the same thing, right? Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. So that would make our Immortal Dragon a level 2, specifically. Do we want that? Sorry, I'm just trying to think here what the best course of action is. Because that means he'll be a 3, 3, 3, and 6 plus 1 is 7. No, you know what? Instead of sending Mizuki, I'm sorry. Why don't we send a Vendread? Let's go ahead and bin a copy of Hound Horde. This will make sense momentarily. Send a copy of Hound Horde. Immortal Dragon now becomes level 3 specifically. Oh, wait, no. I wasn't thinking about that, actually. We can't send the Hound Horde because then in order... We have to pitch the evolution, which we need. Man, hold on. I guess... We don't really have a choice then, do we? We kind of have to send the... Here, let's just do what we wanted to do initially. Let's just send the Mizuki here. My apologies for, wasting all this time. This is what happens when you record off the cuff, right? But this gives you the most realist representation of what the deck is like, which I'm sure a lot of you duelists enjoy. And also chime down below in the comments if you see something that maybe I'm doing wrong or that I could have done differently, then by all means, I'm absolutely open to any suggestions in the comments section. But what we can do here is let's go... Remember, he's level 2 now because we sent Mizuki. Let's banish our Mizuki. Go ahead and special summon out Vendread Slayer from the graveyard. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because we want to be able to activate evolution. We're going to send a level 1 Vendread from our deck to grave, which will be a copy of Core. And then we're going to tribute our Slayer from field. 6 + 1 makes 7. That will allow us to ritual our Battle Lord from grave. And now, at this point, we could go Battle Lord effect to banish, like, evolution, declare a card type, but realistically, I mean, we're so deep into our combo, like, if they had hand traps, they most likely would have used them against us already. But yeah, the fact that you have the ability to do that is obviously really cool. And then here, remember, Immortal Dragon is a level 2 tuner, so there isn't anything we can make synchro-wise from this point. We can just link off the Battle Lord and the Immortal Dragon for copy of... What do we grab? Probably Sucker. That will trigger the Battle Lord effect to add a ritual monster from deck to hand. Of which there's quite a few things we can grab. We can grab like Chimera, for example. And then we send a Vendread monster from deck to grave. Now, at this point, we can go ahead and bin our copy of Scar of the Vendread, who we haven't had in rotation just yet. So we'll send a Scar of the Vendread. That will trigger the Scar effect, allowing us to add a ritual spell from deck to hand, which will be our copy of Ravenous. I think is probably what we want to go for here. Yeah, so let's grab a copy of Ravenous Vendread. And then what we can do now is we can use Vendread Core in the grave, banishing a zombie to special summon itself. So I guess we can get rid of our copy of... Let's pitch the Volcarion. Special summon a Vendread Core from grave. That will trigger our Sucker to draw us a card here, since a zombie was summoned from the graveyard. So we draw into Doom King Battledrock. That's actually not too terrible, because we can pitch it off a Droplet. It's a very good pitch for that. And then here, we can then go... Let's see, what do we have in our graveyard? Nothing too crazy. Let's go and activate our Ravenous Vendread. That will let us summon out a Revenance from our deck in face down defense. And then we can tribute summon, or not tribute, ritual summon by tributing the summon monster plus other monsters we control. So let's get rid of the Core and the Revenance to bring out our Vendread Chimera, which will have the inherited effect of Revenance plus Core, meaning he cannot be targeted by card effects, and he can quick effect banish special summon monsters. Also protect us from, you know, cards that would destroy with his own effect, which is pretty cool. And then what that does is that will trigger our Scar, allowing us to special itself by banishing a zombie from grave. That will trigger, and then we can use Dissipator here, because remember we are Vendread locked at this point. We can bring back a Vendread card of our choice, which will probably be... Can bring back Revenance, I suppose. And then we will link summon using both the Scar and the Revenance, breaking us out of the Vendread specific lock to make it add Vendread Savior. We can then go add Vendread to add a Vendread card from grave back to hand, which we can add back Ravenous, for example. It's just whatever card we want back to our hand for follow-up. And then we can go ahead and like set the Droplet. We can probably link off Add Vendread and Sucker off for the Yukiona, like I had mentioned previously. And at least here, we have follow-up in the hand. We have quick effect banish, double monster negates, and then an additional monster negate with the Dissipator, which we do have plenty of banish cards to cycle back. And then we also have a Droplet. And then in our graveyard, we still have a copy of Origin. Not that we have a Slayer on board anyway, so I guess that doesn't matter, but we do have Immortal Dragon. So if any of our zombies get destroyed by battle, we can summon this out from our graveyard, and then it just gives us an additional follow-up play, which I think is pretty awesome. So that is going to wrap up, and then obviously we do have a Doom King and a Ravenous in the hand. And the Doom King is just very good fodder for the droplet. We can just bend this to grave, and then if there is a field spell in play on the next standby, Doom King will just summon himself, which is really nice. So I think this is going to wrap up our test hands. Again, this video is already pushing 40 plus minutes. I don't want to make it any longer than that. For those of you who stuck around this entire time, thank you all so much for your continued support. Again, if you're watching this and you've made it 40 minutes into this video and you're still not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, please. Like the video, comment down below what you thought. Comment if you thought maybe there was a different line I could have went down. If you guys want a second test hand video, I'd be glad to do one for you as well. If you want to continue seeing more Vendread content, or maybe even a live duel featuring this deck, I think would be really cool. It's just unfortunate, obviously, none of the test hands I drew, we got to see anything like the Necromancer in play, but that's what the combo video, which is linked in the description below, is for. We did plenty of combos featuring Necromancer, so maybe it was kind of refreshing to see combos that didn't involve him. But yeah, like I said, thank you all so much for your continued support. Stay tuned for more amazing post-Supreme Darkness content coming your way. And with that being said, this is Nick, hitting that end phase. Peace.